We are TNM News.
Hi, everybody. Todd Dankin here with TNM News, and welcome once again to another Todd Talk. Today, I am in the studio with Eric Postow, and he is an attorney with the Parlator Law Group, where he supports clients in the cannabis industry. And how does he do that? Well, he supports it with corporate law, compliance, licensing, any kind of litigation, strategies, and, of course, business development. Eric is licensed to practice law in Virginia, and he also represents clients in federal court nationwide. He's currently focusing on helping the entrepreneurs prepare for Virginia's recreational market in 2024. And just so you know, prior to practicing law, Eric was a Marine Corps officer for 7 years. He's also a member of the NAACP, the International Cannabis Bar Association, the Association of Certified Commercial Cannabis Experts, and, of course, the Virginia State Bar. Eric, welcome to the National Marijuana News. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, of course. Of course. So tell me first, how do you go from an officer in the Marine Corps, thank you for your service, sir, and to being a lawyer defending pot?
Well, a long, twisted road, I suppose.
Right.
I honestly, the Marine Corps was a wonderful first place for me to go out of college. I went through officer candidate school and commissioned as a second lieutenant. I got to go all over the world. I was handed a tremendous amount of responsibility from a relatively young age compared to my peer groups, and really just told to be a critical thinker and make decisions. So that it lent itself to very well to being able to make important decisions and be a critical thinker as an attorney.
Sure.
Also, the benefit of the GI Bill, I got to go to law school for free, so I used the benefits to my advantage for sure. But honestly, a lot of the things that you learn as a Marine or a service member come down to ethos, core convictions, values, honor, courage, commitment. We say that in the Marine Corps quite a bit. And I think that those are pretty similar to how you ought to be as an attorney. You have to have commitment to your clients and to the practice of law, to searching for the truth, to weeding through superfluous information to get to the heart of a matter. You have to have the courage of your conviction. To be in cannabis for any person, whether you're plant touching or ancillary like me as an attorney, I think it takes a little bit of courage right now, even though the tides have turned and the majority of Americans want legalized marijuana. I will tell you, the first time that I made a post about marijuana or cannabis online and basically outed myself as someone that was going to work in this space and support the industry, it was a little nerve-wracking. I did not know how people were going to respond, but again, that courage to do the right thing, and I believe that it's the right thing to support this industry. So, long story short, I think a lot of that ethos from my time as a Marine certainly is with me now as an attorney representing folks in this industry.
Right. Yeah. So that's a great answer, because that's what they teach you, right? No judgment in the Marine Corps, right? Help your brother that's right next to you. It doesn't matter who he is or where he's from, right?
Absolutely. Just got to get
that's great.
Everybody with us to the next place.
Right. That's right. So tell me what's happening in Virginia. I know cannabis has been legal since like July 1st, but it's really more for personal growing, personal consumption. No real industry has been created there. How's the market over there, and when do you expect this industry to be created? Do they have to wait till 2024?
Yeah, so our market is actually a little bit more comprehensive than that. We have a medicinal market. Our pharmaceutical processors came online, I think 2018, maybe 2017. We have separated into 5 health service areas. And then the processors are fully vertically integrated, can have up to, I think, 5 or 6 dispensaries in those locations as well. So we had a medicinal market that had already been started. What happened in 2021 was, for the first time, adult use recreational was passed, decriminalization was passed, and home grow was passed. So presently, individuals per household can grow up to 4 plants for their personal consumption. You can't sell it. You can give it away amongst your friends, but not for anything of any sort of value, so no trades or anything like that. But the most important thing to come out of 2021 legislation was the pathway to adult use recreational markets, meaning sales, with 2024 currently being our market start date. Caveat, also built within that law, was a 2022 requirement for reenactment. So in 2022, everything that was in that law needs to be reenacted. Well, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but Virginia basically just had a full changing of the guard in terms of leadership from Democrat to Republican.
Of course. Yeah.
So I would expect to see a vastly different 2022 cannabis law than we saw in 2021. However, I think it's important for your viewers and Virginians in particular. I don't believe that we're going to see repeal at all. I think even Governor-elect Youngkin understands the tax revenue at a minimum that's on the table.
Right.
The amount of investment that's already pouring into the Commonwealth, folks that are involved, and people in red areas, Republicans and Democrats alike, want this adult use market to come. They see opportunities in it for themselves. So I think we're going to move forward with a new version of that law, but it's not going to be repealed. Cannabis is not leaving Virginia, is my prediction for sure.
And was that one of was that talked about during the campaign?
It was talked about, but honestly, I think it was a missed opportunity for McAuliffe. Yeah. I think that it was kind of a secondary or tertiary notion that Youngkin had some reservations at the time, early on in the campaign. He had said that he said incorrectly that states that had legalized cannabis really hadn't seen the tax revenues. He's since changed his tune on that because, of course, it's verifiably wrong.
Right.
But I don't think McAuliffe took advantage of that at all, that there were a lot of things potentially at stake, and undervalued, I think, the popularity of the 2021 cannabis legislation.
Yeah.
That he could have made that more of his campaign. But frankly, neither one of them spent a whole lot of time talking about it. Cannabis people talked about it. Right. I talked about it.
Right.
Home growers and folks like that, and people, clients of mine, and folks that are interested in coming to Virginia to start their business, they were talking about it. But I think that it was a missed opportunity because whoever won was going to be in a major decision-making seat for reenactment.
Right.
And I think that we could have spent more time on that issue. But there were other things that I think they thought were more important to the Commonwealth as a whole.
Yeah, I think that politicians are a little afraid of cannabis, right? Because they'll lose, they think, half of the people, right? But the truth is about 80% of the country wants it legal. Literally about 80%.
I've heard it's about 93% want medicinal at least.
Right, right.
Think about this. Is there any other topic where you've got 93% consensus across political aisle on anything?
Yeah, I was going to say it is the most bipartisan subject that you could even talk about, right? Even more than women's rights. More people want to be able to smoke weed than they want women to get the same pay as a man, right? So that's.
I think that's probably true.
It probably is true. So when will marijuana sales begin in Virginia?
So assuming that reenactment occurs and there's no major shift to the timelines,
right?
Applications for licensing should start in either July or January of 2023, with retail starting in January 1, 2024. So that's the current timeline, but stand by once the new legislature and everybody takes their seats in February, March. I think that's when we'll see what the new lay of the land is. 2021 set up the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority. Some folks are out there saying, is that going to go away? Are they going to wrap this up under the Alcohol Control Board, or will some other organization take the helm of cannabis? So there's a lot of big questions. as to what changes we might see. But presently, 2024, we would be seeing our first retail stores open.
Well, that's exciting. One of my co-hosts who I do a lot of shows with, her name is Edible D, and she grew up in Virginia and always talks about going home to Virginia. And when they passed last year, I mean, she called me all excited, and we talked about it on a show. And but it's only really right now for personal use and personal growers. Do you think when the industry launches, you think they're going to also pass cannabis lounges? Because that seems to be the big thing on people's topics in other, legal territories.
Yeah. So along with the craft scene, I think lounges fits that. Right now, there currently exists in concept lounges in Virginia. Basically membership places where people pay a membership fee, and then they can come and consume, and they can talk about cannabis, and they can trade. I think it's a gray area in terms of the law,
right?
Because it's novel, and people are trying some things. I think it's dangerous for some folks. If you start getting involved in sales, you're crossing that line. Right. So I think it's a little easy to cross lines in some ways, but it already exists, and I think it does have a place. Imagine right now you live in an apartment building where you cannot consume because the rules of the apartment building are not, or you live in a home with small kids, and that's just not what you want to do at home for your own personal reasons.
Sure.
A lounge offers you a place to go where you can safely consume cannabis and be around people who also enjoy it, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I do too. Here in Vegas, they have a tasting lounge at the New Woo dispensary, which is on the Indian reservation, and they have passed some lounge legislation, but it has not gone into effect yet. They haven't passed it. And I was in California at the Cannabis Cafe, but that has since closed because of COVID, and it created a whole big ordeal. But how they worked it was a dispensary tagged on to a separate address, which was the restaurant. So the restaurant would give you the dispensary menu. You would order both your food and your weed, and then the waiter would bring you both. And it was a very, very interesting and fun place to frequent. The New Woo Lounge here is more of a tasting room. So if you go to the dispensary, they have a little lounge. You could buy a table, right? And with the table, you get like your own bong, and you get your own server, and they bring you the stuff. But much like cigar lounges, how popular they are around the country, I think that's the same sort of direction that lounges are going to go in. Do you think that?
I have to think so. What I think would be really appealing is that high touch cannabis experience where you go to a beautiful setting. And this is what prompts me to think about wineries, the beautiful setting where you can see the plants. You can be around the atmosphere. Some other things are built in that set and setting piece to it, and maybe some sort of high-end selection of tastings and some sort of expert. The newer concept of the ganjier, that's like the sommelier.
Yeah.
I think that is something that could catch on, creating the cannabis experience. Cannatourism, I think, is certainly something that could work and people would go to, for the same reasons you'd go to a beautiful vineyard to have nice wine. You'd go to a beautiful cannabis growing place for top level cannabis and someone to talk to you and explain and have that type of shared experience.
Yeah, imagine learning what it actually is and not being afraid of it anymore. That would be a great thing, I think. So
absolutely.
Yes. So in Virginia, what's happening with, is anything changing with anyone who's been incarcerated for any kind of, minor cannabis infraction? Are they being let out of jail, or what's happening there?
Yep. Processes are underway for expungement. It's not as clear cut as like it all happened on Tuesday of last week, but it's an ongoing process. So I think that we're just going to see that continue to unfold. In the current legislation, the current law for licensing, Virginia put together what I think was one of the more robust social equity programs to offer licenses to folks who had been incarcerated, family members thereof, folks who've been disproportionately policed under the Prohibition era. So I think that the Commonwealth was thinking about those people. And what's important for everyone to remember is that this industry necessarily requires expertise of legacy professionals, people who were in the industry when it was not legal because they understood this plan, they wanted to work with it, and they took those types of risks. So we cannot and we should not be shunning them now that we've made it legal for everyone else. We need to invite them in, offer them a chance to legitimize themselves through licensing, to do things above board. And a lot of those folks do have records, and we're changing our mindset on this thing. So they should have those records cleaned as a result, is my perspective. And we're doing that in Virginia, but there's no real clear timeline of like when's it going to happen and be complete.
Yeah, it seems to be a difficult thing for everyone to commit to as you know, laws are changing around the country. I know Illinois started to let some folks out of jail. California definitely is on track to do that. I think part of the problem is, though, that or actually one of the problems with the MORE Act that they're trying to still fumble through legislation is that the automatic expungement, but that's all for federal crimes, right? Not for state crimes. And aren't most of the folks in jail for local state things?
Well, I think it's a mixture. I think right now on the state level, that's the most control that a state has, is to influence the records of those folks. Federal is not going to change until they change the Schedule
Right.
1 and pass massive comprehensive legislation.
Right.
So I think we're more likely to see those records on the state side be expunged long before any federal records do.
Oh, good. Good. That's great news. So let's talk about this now famous case that you're involved with. It's a case out of Maine where your client is charged with conspiracy to distribute and possess with intent to distribute a controlled substance, right? And if I get any of this wrong, please correct me. Conspiracy to commit money laundering, conspiracy to commit honest services fraud, conspiracy to distribute and possess with the intent to distribute controlled substances, bank fraud, conspiracy to defraud the United States and tax evasion. And if convicted, he faces between 10 years and life on just the drug distribution charge alone. Tell me what is happening. And well, I'm sure we're going to go into what is wrong with our legal system because all of these charges are happening in a legal state, right?
Yeah. So without getting into the real nuts and bolts of the case, because it's ongoing litigation,
Yeah.
what I can say is that at first glance, you have a lot of charges, but it really all boils down to one thing, that my client was a legal, sanctioned, state-sanctioned medicinal cannabis business and was operating under the laws of Maine. And the federal government is still, because it's Schedule 1 is still illegal, still has a desire to go after these businesses for whatever their reasons may be. But all of those charges stem from the general concept that they're working with a federally illegal drug. That's how it's still considered, Schedule 1 drug.
Yeah.
But that's what it all comes down to. But the more important thing is that we're going to fight this thing. That my client is innocent. That we're working towards our day in court, and that the federal government really has over encroached in this case, as they do. What you see across the country is, and really, if I could just generalize for a moment.
Sure.
What cannabis businesses in legal states who are licensed and operating under their state license, what they have to worry about, if anywhere down the chain of their operations, anyone does anything that the federal government deems to be out of the bounds of the state licensing regime, the program, then they're going to say they're out of compliance, and then they're going to come after them. That's their key in. since 2014, there is a rider in every appropriations bill that's been passed called the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment that prevents the DOJ from spending money to prosecute legal medical marijuana businesses who are compliant under state law. So what the DOJ does, what the federal government does, is they try to make claims anywhere in that entire chain of operations that this person was doing something illegal or this person allegedly did something illegal. So everything, we're going to go back on all the things that occurred and say that the whole operation is illegal, which of course is nonsense. But that's what happens in these cases. But the Ninth Circuit, in a famous case called McIntosh case, basically upheld what Rohrabacher-Farr was intending to do, which prevented the DOJ from spending any money on these prosecutions, based on an evidentiary hearing and showing that the business was in fact compliant under state law. So it's a long process.
Right.
There's a lot of things that we're going to have to do, but that is really just a message broadly about legalized cannabis businesses, that they don't feel safe, because even if they have the best intentions in the world to be compliant, to follow the state law, anywhere someone steps out of line, or even the perception that they stepped out of line, it can really chill the entire industry. And that's what Rohrabacher-Farr was trying to prevent. Was trying to prevent chilling these industries by the federal government over encroaching and coming in and not just saying, throwing one guy in jail, destroying an entire supply chain.
Right.
The hundreds of jobs that are a part of these businesses for folks that are operating in these states, ruining people's lives, threatening to throw them in jail forever over what? An agricultural product.
That's
over
legal,
a plant.
and it's legal,
That's
right?
Legal.
That's it legal. Makes me crazy. I work in a very highly regulated state, which is Nevada, and we work very closely with our state regulators. They just formed, as of last year, the Cannabis Control Board, and as long as you follow the rules, right, everything should be okay. And isn't that what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, from a business operator's perspective. And think about it, any business, and this is not, I am not specifically discussing my clients and their business operations, but just you can extrapolate. Any business operation in any industry that's large, has lots of employees doing things. Compliance can be many different forms. You have one person that does one thing bad somewhere well down the chain. Unbeknownst to you, you can be caught up in that whole mess because of something they did, because they're going to tie everything back to the business operations because they don't want you to be doing it,
right? Because
they still think it's illegal, and we have to uphold this thing. Now, the real question is, what are we doing here? What are we really talking about? What is the harm right now that these knights in shining armor, the DOJ, are coming after these businesses? To prevent what harm? The war on drugs is over. It was lost. Marijuana is an agricultural product that people for thousands of years have been using for personal reasons, medicinal reasons, what have you. The people of this country have said for a long time now that they don't want it to be criminalized, that they want to be able to use it if they so choose. And states have moved with this thing. It is an incoherent situation right now. Even Justice Thomas, a conservative Supreme Court justice, commented on this recently and said the whole thing is incoherent. You have federal saying it's illegal, but allowing states to do their programs. You've got this rider saying the DOJ can't prevent them. I mean, it's starting to be, it doesn't make any sense. And think about it this way. Suppose they prosecuted a business today and that business was found guilty under the law, and that person went to jail. What happens when we federally legalize this thing, which we all know is going to happen? How much time and money and effort are we going to waste on doing massive expungements for things when we know this is coming? And don't we have better things to spend our resources on Like let's prevent child trafficking. Why are we going after marijuana businesses who are trying to operate under their state's lawful program? That's my question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's because it's easy, right? It's easy for the Justice Department to do those things, but it still doesn't make any sense when as long as you're following state laws for you to get in trouble federally. You're right. It's just stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. What are you supposed
think about
to
it
do?
another
Just
way.
not get in the business, right?
Well, exactly. That's the chilling effect. But think about it another way. The state has a compliance program.
Right.
They have an ability to hold you accountable.
That's right.
If you step out of line.
That's right.
The same as in Maine as in Nevada. They have their own ways of doing it.
That's right.
So why don't we let them do it? If Maine deemed my client to be out of compliance, which they did not, by the way,
right.
Maine inspected my client on a random audit and found them to be fully in compliant, relicensed them numerous times over, including post all this stuff happening. But so under the state of Maine is saying these guys have been doing things right, but the federal government says, "Oh, you know what, Maine? It doesn't matter what you think.
Yeah,
we're gonna manage your program for you." What is that? What kind of message is this?
It is no message. The message is don't come here and don't do business. That's what the message is, right?
Well, certain people in the federal government are moralists and still view marijuana as some sort of gateway drug and all the nonsense that we heard forever.
Yeah.
And so they're just holding on in these dying death throes of a waning prohibitionary era.
Yeah.
And times have changed. Move on.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the funny part, well, it's not really funny, but the ironic part about it all is that cigarettes and alcohol are gateway drugs, and you can buy them on any corner in any place in America, right? And
that's
nobody
because we don't really
care.
care about that.
That's right.
We don't
People
really
don't
care about that.
Why don't they care?
If you go back historically on marijuana laws, there's a few things that stand out. One, they were racialized.
Yep.
Two, hemp in particular was viewed as a competitor to cotton.
That's right.
And so you had industry influences that didn't want it, and you had folks tying it to brown people from Mexico and all this stuff. And you can see this in the legislative history when the folks were coming to Capitol Hill and testifying about it. They were using racialized language. And so that's what's panned out today. People view marijuana as something that bad people or whatever.
Nixon started that with, he wanted to control black folks and he wanted to control hippies. So that's
Absolutely.
how it all started. Yeah,
absolutely. And so it's a political thing. It's a political question.
Yeah.
But the politics have changed in terms of the population. The politics haven't changed because we don't have the courage on Capitol Hill to do what is being demanded by people.
What the people want, right? Too many old white guys.
And that's what I think.
Yeah.
That's what I think this case offers us an opportunity. Let's take a look at, because this is a reflection of ourselves.
Yeah.
We have said in Maine, we want legalized marijuana. We want a medicinal market. We want to create opportunities for people to build businesses around this, who care about this plant and care about their patients. And we want the folks who maybe in no other segment of society in terms of industry could make something of themselves in terms of that financial growth and things like that. But finally, this is the thing that they can do it with. They understand it. And what happens? You have the federal government coming to smack them down. And who are they really smacking down if you look at these cases? Poor people.
Yeah.
As always, it's folks that made something of themselves in this space, and they're getting the long arm of the law in terms of the federal government coming after them for sure.
Again.
And
right.
it's nonsense.
Yeah. Yeah, it is nonsensical. You never see, the DOJ going after Tilray, right? Or some of this, any of these billion-dollar pot companies. They always go after the local guys who they think might be breaking a law or two. So when do you think the feds do make cannabis legal?
I don't know. I mean, if you look at various legislative efforts, I see a lot of traction on safe banking. It keeps getting passed over and over again.
Yeah.
Over the past few years, there's a number of bills that are being put together by both Democrat and Republican members of the House for legalization pathways. I think I just heard that there was a new Republican legalization bill that was recently surfaced. So momentum is there. We're going to see more and more of this stuff until we have that catalyst moment. People that I talk to in the industry think it's within 5 years or so. You know, a lot of folks were disappointed with the Biden administration, thinking that this was going to be the administration that was going to get it done. But he really has not been a friend of marijuana. He does not. I don't believe he views it as a safe whatever. Right. I think he's part of that older regime that still thinks about it in the drug war language.
Sure.
So he has.
Well, he's about 100 years old, right? So.
Well, he hasn't been a friend to the cannabis industry largely, and in fact, interestingly enough, the change came under Trump with the 2018 Farm Bill.
Yeah.
Legalizing hemp and taking out a Schedule 1. So. You never know what's going to happen, and people you would think wouldn't make changes do, and folks you expect to make changes don't. So it's impossible to say for real, but the voting public wants it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's the one thing we can hang our hat on. The voting public across the country wants it, and so we just vote for enough votes that will adhere to what the will of the people are on this issue, and it will happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I believe that to be true as well. And I think it's going to happen with the next presidential election. I think it's going to, this is Todd Dankin's predictions. I don't know anything about anything, but this is what I think. I think that the Dems are going to be in a little bit of trouble. And I think they're going to hang their hat on cannabis legalization because they can get 70 to 80% of the country, that especially those living in non-cannabis legal states. But that's what I think is going to happen. And the interesting thing is that, Kamala, who was the, attorney general in California, incarcerated many people in the cannabis for cannabis crimes. So I think there's going to be a fight. I think she's going to have to come out and apologize and really do something serious to make that work. Anyway, that's what I think is going to happen. But I mean, like we talked about before, a lot of politicians are afraid of cannabis because they don't know where their base is going to go. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that politicians they're their own breed for sure.
Yeah.
But what's very clear is that the cannabis plant offers a lot of different use in a variety of ways.
Sure.
Whether it's industrial hemp for clothing or food or products or things for batteries. I mean, there's so many uses for it. And then for personal consumption, medicinal consumption, it's such a versatile plant that people have gravitated towards it for so many different reasons. You can have folks that want legalization and they never intend to use any sort of cannabis intoxicant for themselves, but they like the idea that the plant is being studied more and new uses are coming from it all the time. Or maybe they like the industrial hemp side of it or whatever. Or maybe they do want it for consumption, or maybe they just want the choice. That's all.
That's
just
right.
The
How about a
ability
little
to
personal
choose.
Freedom?
Absolutely. That's the libertarian in me, the personal freedom,
right.
Freedom to choose, right?
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? So what's the next steps in your case? What can you talk about, and how could folks learn more about it?
What I think is important right now is to pay attention. Pay attention to what's going on in Maine, and there's maybe a couple other cases nationwide. These cases are going to shift the way we view cannabis businesses. We're going to ask important questions. Some of those questions have never been asked and answered by the court before, and we're going to push these issues. We believe the federal government over-encroached We intend to show that. So I think it's important for the cannabis industry to pay attention and to use your voice. Where is that alarm, that rage, that why is this still happening? You have power in numbers, and I would speak directly to the industry. Start talking about it. Start saying that this shouldn't be the way, that you're outraged, quite frankly, because it is outrageous. Innocent people are having their lives destroyed. Even if we prevail, my client spent 16 months waiting for the complaint to be filed. He had his business almost ruined, money taken from them, property taken from them, their reputations dragged through the mud. Over what? Over marijuana that's legal in the state. That's what this is all about.
It just doesn't compute in my head. We could say it 100 times, right? And it just doesn't make any sense. Here's a guy who thinks he's doing everything right. He's following he looks at the laws, because as you get a license for cannabis, whether it's medical or recreational, the local municipalities, they're going to give you the laws. They're going to say, do this. And like you said, they show up and they audit. And they make sure that you're doing not only everything right, but you're doing everything you say that you're doing. We deal with that all the time. So the fact that he's doing everything legal and the feds don't like it just blows my mind. What's really the answer?
The answer to what?
To a business owner not having to fear the feds.
So I mean, the answer is, honest to goodness, stay in compliance. If this is your industry, then you still got to go for it. You have to have that courage, because it's the right thing to do for you and your family. Maintain that compliance. Pay attention to everything that you can. You have to be hyper alert. If there's anyone at any part in your entire ecosystem who might do something, step out of line, just make sure you have a strong compliance program, and that you know who your people are. I mean, that's the best advice I would give to any cannabis business.
Yeah.
Invest in your compliance management. Don't overlook it. It's important.
It is very important.
And,
yeah.
Honestly, even if you do, there are risks to this thing. Even if you're doing everything right, and just have the courage to do what you think is right. Quite honestly, because the vast majority of people are with you.
Yeah.
So it's scary, because you could do everything right, and still the federal government is coming after you, or at least there's the fear that they're constantly looking at you and things like this. But you just, that courage of your conviction that I'm doing this right, I'm going to follow the law, and if anything happens, I'll stand up and fight, and that's what we're doing here. We're fighting.
Yeah.
We don't believe we did anything wrong, and we intend to show that.
Right. Well, that's great. And I want to wish you and your client, of course, the best of luck. How do we follow you, Eric? Do you have a Facebook page or an Instagram or a Twitter? And how do we, keep an eye on the case? Is there anywhere that things are being posted?
So there isn't a whole lot being posted right now. I mean, obviously it's litigation, so we're not going to be discussing a lot of the details, but It's in the news. And so you could certainly look up cannabis cases in Maine, and you would probably find it pretty easily.
Yeah. Okay.
Being covered right now. I have a podcast, the Commonwealth Canna Council, and we talk about a variety of industry-related things, mainly from a legal perspective. So you can tune into that. You can find that on our Parliatory Law Group YouTube channel under the Commonwealth Canna Council there. So that's the best way to stay in tune with what I'm doing and industry things. But if you want to pay attention to this case in particular, just Google it. And you'll find Maine cannabis, federal criminal case, and it'll come up. And stay engaged. The industry needs to pay attention to this thing. One, to learn any possible lessons for themselves, but more to see what's actually happening to their peers.
Right.
And honestly, it's wrong. It's wrong what's happening. Clearly wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you for fighting the good fight and trying to make things right. Thank you for your service as well. Eric Postow, thank you again for joining us here on TNM News. Make sure you check him out. He's at the Parlator Law Group in Virginia, and he is, fighting the good fight for cannabis businesses and folks involved in the cannabis industry. Looking forward to an exciting start to the recreational business in Virginia, of course, and keeping an eye out for, of course, our good friend Edible D in the Virginia area. Even though she's living in Puerto Rico, I know she's working on some things in Virginia. Any parting words, Eric?
I love what you're doing, Todd. To the industry, just keep going. We won the fight. People that want cannabis won the fight. It's just a matter of time. States are going to keep turning on their programs. Voters are going to vote for it. It's the right thing to do. It's an agricultural product, an agricultural plant, and frankly, just people need to get with the times. The federal laws are going to change. It's a matter of time.
I agree with you 100%, my friend. Keep up the good fight. Let's stay in touch over the next several months. And if you have any updates that you'd like to share, we're happy to share them with our audience, of course. So once again, it's Eric Postow from the Parlator Law Group in Virginia. Keep watching what's happening in Maine, because he's got his client in Maine who has been following the state laws, and yet the feds think he's doing something wrong. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Once again, I'm Todd Dankin with TNM News. Eric, thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
We are TNM News.